Okay, now before I put the bearings in the engine and start putting everything together so we can plastic gauge and check our bearing clearances on the main bearings, I always take my old bearings. I take my micrometer. As you can see, there's a little attachment on there. This little ball here, and with that little black metal piece there, it snaps onto the end of your micrometer. And what it's for is so you can measure things like these bearings that doesn't have a flat surface. See, that ball ensures that you are actually getting a true reading on the thickness of whatever you're checking. And I always check a few of my old bearings, since my old bearings are not extremely wore. And that ball adds 200 thousandths, by the way, to what it would originally say if I didn't have that attachment on there. And this old bearing is showing 300 thousandths, which means it's only 100 thousandths thick because of the ball. Now, and I just check a few of them because these are not extreme. Now that one's 300 and a half. So it's got, that other one had a little wear. And the ones with the grooves are the uppers. Those are the ones that go into the block, not the cap, main cap, because the oil comes through the oil hole in the block. And here's a lower 300 and a half. And we'll check a few more. 300 and a half. Looks like we got one. Half thousand small. It's 300 and a half. You see it's mostly wore there where most of the load was. And right there is, you can see the new surface of the bearing still there. Let's just see what that reads. Actually, it's smaller because these things are not true all the way around. They were like that new. Show you a lot of them. Now this one would be harder to check. Okay, I'm getting 300. That's the thrust bearing, by the way. Block side. Now, for some reason, the thrust bearings have grooves both top and bottom. So we're getting around 300. Some are 300 and a half. Let's check our new ones. I'm going to check all my new ones. Getting 300. Don't know why then. Okay. That's a block side. Getting 300. 300. 300. 300 and a half. Actually, that was 300. Okay, all these. Yeah, that was. As you can see, even brand new bearings are not exact. Almost 300 and a half. 300. You get the picture here. So, let's see. $300 and a half. Okay, so all of them are about anywhere from 300 to 300 and a half, just like the old ones. They vary, so, which tells me the old ones weren't really wore. They show some signs of wear where they've been rubbing, which brand new ones are going to look like it right after startup. Okay, so since we're going to plastic gauge this first, we're not putting any oil on these. And you want to make sure your surfaces are clean. I've already cleaned them with a clean rag, but you always want to kind of wipe them down with your finger too, because you feel any kind of tiny bit of grit, it will stick to your finger. Just clean your fingers off with a clean rag and wipe each surface off. And we just stick our dry bearings in there for now, making sure our oil, or a little notch right here, if you can see that, lines up with the notch in the block. That is the middle one for the thrust. We don't want to put that there for sure. Just make sure they fit down in there nice and flush, and you can see your oil groove through there. Here's the thrust bearing, which goes here. Make sure the backside's clean too, of course. Any tiny bit of dirt or grit can change your clearances and cause you severe problems. Oh, I'll tell you, lifting this 460 crank makes me want to start building small blocks again. I don't want to turn that completely dry. I just want to make sure it feels okay. Okay, so here's the deal with the plastic gauge. When you buy plastic gauge, you get a hose strip like this, and inside here is, it's like a, I don't know what substance it's made out of. I'm sure somebody who knows more about it than I do will tell me all about it. And you just cut off one little section there, because you get a gauge. This side is millimeters. We're not going to pay attention to that. This side reads in thousandths, 2, 3, 4, 5 thousandths. And inside here, if I can get it out without dropping it. Okay, I'm going to try tearing it. It's been a long time since I used these, so I'm going to look clumsy. And there you go, you get that little piece out of there. Actually, there's 2 pieces in there. See, they had it doubled up on me, which I thought they ripped me off at first. And you just lay a little piece. You set this aside here. Right here. On top of the crank. I guess you might want, some people might suggest you use a little bit of oil so it sticks, but I don't like to use any oil because I feel that changes the reading. I'm going to find my number 1 main cap. Go ahead and put it on. Tap it down flat. Arrow right there goes towards the front. I'm going to have to find my torque wrench. Okay, so this will be the first time I've used this torque wrench. It's an older Craftsman I bought off of eBay, and I really wish I would have opened the package a long time ago. One of the things I ordered, and it's been sitting around in the bedroom for about 2 months, and I never did open the box. And it's supposed to be calibrated good. I don't have a really accurate way to calibrate it, but I did stick it in the vise and it feels about right. Now, torque specs on a 460 main bearing is anywhere from 95 to 105 foot-pounds. So we're going to just do it at 95. And I'm not going to go the full 95 on the first one. What I'm going to do is kind of evenly apply more torque to each side. Really, the proper way to do it is start at maybe 50, torque them down to 50. Don't know what happened there. There we go. There's 100 or 95. Now, take my breaker bar. See if I can break them loose without the stand rolling around on me. Trying to move on me a little bit. Ouch. And as you can see, the plastic gauge is flattened. And we're going to take a little paper gauge and we're going to check it. And let me try to get the camera a little closer for you. And it looks like we got around a little more than 2, but less than 3. And the bearing clearance for a 460. This is a good book, by the way. You can also go on the internet and get all these torque specs, but this engine here, it covers all the older Ford engines. I bought this a long time ago before most people had internet. And if you look right here, here's your boat torque specs, and here's your bearing clearances. Main bearing clearance 2.5 to 3, and that's exactly where we're at on that one. And what I will do, I'm not going to repeat and show you all of them, but I will let you know whether they all turned out good or not. But I'm going to check each and every one that way. But before you go for final assembly, you want to scrape that off, get most of it off with your fingernail. Then you can take some lacquer thinner or carb cleaner, and I think it will take it right off. Yes, it cleaned it off just fine. And you also will get some on your bearing. You want to make sure you get that off before oiling and final assembly. And that wipes it right off, nice and clean. And that lacquer thinner, most of it is already dried out of that rag. It dries really quick, so don't worry about it damaging the bearing surface. And you just want to make sure you get all that off for final assembly. So I'm going to check all these and I'll tell you how it turns out. Alright, I plastic gauged the rest of the main journals. They all turned out good, just like the first one. This one right here was a little tighter than the rest. It was like right at 2/1000ths. So we're only talking a couple tenths, but it's within specs. So what I'm doing now, as you can see, I got a dial indicator set up on the end of the crank. I still had the middle main cap bolted in, which I took them all apart and cleaned the plastic gauge off, of course. And what I'm doing here, I got the dial indicator set on 0, and you just stick something in between the weights, counterweights of the crank and the block. Hopefully it won't turn on me. And we hope we can move it about 4/1000ths. Actually, it's moving. This one's a little on the tight side, but it's been that way all along. You can see there, yeah, it's about 3. The tolerance is 4 to 8. Actually, I can force 4 out of it, so it's right there, pretty snug, which I guess is good. You don't want it too tight, of course. Now, before I go to assemble it, I will take my micrometer and check the thickness of the thrust surface of the bearing, the new one compared to the old one. But we're ready to pull the crank out, and we'll check that, lube everything up, and get it all back together. At least the crank part. Okay, I'm just putting a nice thick coating of this assembly lube, or bearing guard as they call it, Clevite 77 bearing guard. I just call it assembly lube on each one of these. And of course, before we start this engine up, we will prime the oil pump, and I'll show you how to do that. Got a lot of work to do before we get that far. Notice I'm also coating the side of the thrust bearing. Fill in those grooves with this stuff. Always keep your hands clean before you go to grabbing hold of the crank. When covered in oil, it'll be easy for grit and stuff to get stuck to them, to my fingers and hands. It is. Before I put the main caps on, I always like to do this. Just spin it over. Gets that oil all over, the assembly lube all over the crank. Now I got to oil up my main caps, and we'll put those on. And guess what I forgot to do when I put the crank in? Rear main. So go ahead and put it in the cap first. And it looks like, see the lip? That goes towards the back of the engine. So that means we turn it around when we put it in the cap. That there, steal a little bit of lube off of the bearing. Right there. Let's get this out of the way so I don't knock it down. You know how us chimpanzees are when we try to put engines together. And I'm going to see if I can get lucky. Okay, to keep from having to lift the crank back out, here's what I'm going to do. Put some lube on this. Seal here. Pay attention to which way we're putting it in. We need that lip towards the back like I just told you. And I'm going to lay it on my crank. I'm not going to force it down in that slot, because that would shave some material off. Let's see how this works. As you can see, I just lifted the crank a little bit, and don't force it. Don't want to shave no material off of that rubber seal. Be patient with it. It's going. There we go, it's in. Now my bearings, we want to make sure they are back in place, because they kind of moved them. We definitely don't want anything going wrong there. Thrust bearing stayed in place, and the two front ones stayed in place. It did make my bearings shift, but that's okay. It didn't hurt anything, and we will make sure crank still spins good. Nothing scratched, nothing's hurt, no harm done. But if you forget to put that rear main in, that's how you do it if you don't want to lift that crank back out. Always check and double check and triple check for dirt, anything like that. Rubber mallet, where's it at? It's over here. Thrust bearing, also known as number 3, right here. Double check for dirt, take your time. Now it doesn't take that long to double and triple check stuff, but it takes a lot more time and money to build your engine twice. Or even worse, trash it beyond repair. And every time I beat one on, tap one down in place, make sure my crank still turns. That way if you got a problem, you know you got a pretty good idea of where the problem is. And I also do the same thing when I start tightening down all the main caps. Here is number 4, right behind number 3, of course. Still good. Oil's dragging a little bit, makes it a little harder to turn. Big heavy crank. It takes a little bit to turn it, even though it's fitting good. This cap is number 2. don't know if you can hear it, but there's thunder going on in the background. We're getting ready to have a storm. Check all my arrows. Front, front, front. That one is obvious. It can only go on one way. Okay. That was looking good. Still good. Now, one thing I need to figure out, we got one bolt with a stud welded on it. It's for my oil pickup. I can't remember. I think it goes, it'd have to go here. Your oil pump's right about there. Yeah. It's got to be that one. Okay, time to torque them all down. I just snugged them. I'm going to start at 50. Yeah, we'll go 60. Right there, 70. 65. Yeah, we'll just start at 65. I like this vintage torque wrench. It's pretty bad when you got to buy antique tools in order to get good ones, unless you really want to spend a lot of money and get snap-on. There goes the air compressor. Still spins good. It should probably go all the way around. That one was already at 65. I didn't think I snugged it that tight. Like I said, if you check it, if you tighten each one, if there is a problem, which it shouldn't be, we've done that one, you'll know pretty much where the problem is. And I mean, it wouldn't take much. I mean, you're talking 2 thousandths and 2 3/10 of a thousandths clearance. One little piece of grit off of a grinding wheel or a tiny metal shaving would lock it up. And I mean, you wouldn't even be able to turn it over right here, right now. Which is a lot better to find a problem like that now than have it in the car and to force the engine over. And if you didn't check anything, that's the only way that could happen. And then that would just really cause a lot of ugly things to happen. 65. Set our trusty old torque wrench to 105. Let me double check them specs. I'm pretty sure it's 105. I got oil all over my book. All done. I'm really glad to start getting this thing partially back together. 2 reasons. I want it to go together, of course, and I want to get the car running again and move on to other stuff. Another reason is when you tear something apart like this, you got parts everywhere and in the way, and it gives me more room. So I'm going to cover this up with a plastic bag. You wouldn't believe how much grit will collect on one if it sits for a week or so, which I'm on vacation this week, so I don't know when I'm going to get the videos out, but I'm going to probably be videoing out here every day because I hope to get most of this engine together this week. So, thanks for watching. That's it. The next thing we're going to do is put our ring filer that we ordered together, and I'm going to show you how to file fit the chrome moly rings. We'll take a look at the sky here and see if it looks threatening. Hearing some thunder. No, it's not much. A little bit, not too bad. Looks bad over there, but anyway, thanks for watching.